All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into it because Don Lemon has now been arrested. And understand that the very laws Democrats fought and defended all these years may be delivering the blowback they never saw coming. And so, as always, go ahead and smash that thumbs up button. That's how I know that you like the video. Subscribe to the channel for more content and share the video. That way more people see what's really going on. Let's get into it.
Breaking news now, just into our CNN newsroom, we are learning journalist, former colleague of ours, former CNN anchor, Don Lemon, has been taken into custody, arrested just days after a protest inside a Minneapolis church. Now, he has maintained that he was going in as a journalist to cover the protest. Let's get right to CNN's Kara Scannell, and CNN chief media analyst Brian Stelter is also here with us. Kara, what are you learning first about this arrest that we should note? A judge, a magistrate judge, had rejected the federal government's attempt to put him under arrest just 1 week or so ago.
Sarah, that's right. We had reported that earlier this week that the magistrate judge had rejected an attempt by DOJ to bring criminal charges against Don Lemon. What we have learned is that last night in Los Angeles, in the 11 o'clock hour, Don Lemon was arrested in the hotel lobby in Beverly Hills and taken into custody. Now, it is not clear at this time what he is charged with, or if he is charged in a criminal complaint, or if he is charged in an indictment which would have been returned by a grand jury. But it does appear to be connected to that because, as we reported earlier this week, the Attorney General Pam Bondi was livid that Lemon was not charged at the time. It appeared that they were going to continue to try to bring charges against him. And now we know that Lemon was arrested last night in Los Angeles, where he was in town to cover the Grammys. I do have a statement from his attorney, Abby Lowell, and it says in part, Don has been a journalist for 30 years, and his constitutionally protected work in Minneapolis was no different than what he has always done. The First Amendment exists to protect journalists whose role it is to shine light on the truth and hold those in power accountable. There is no more important time for people like Don to be doing this work. Instead of investigating the federal agents who killed 2 peaceful Minnesota protesters, the Trump Justice Department is devoting its time, attention, and resources to this arrest, and that is the real indictment of wrongdoing in this case. Now, we do expect Lemon to make an appearance in court today. That is usually the process that follows when someone is arrested, and then it will be up to the judge whether he gives him bail, which would be expected in this case. So we're likely to learn more details about exactly what he is charged with, what form he is charged in, and if this was returned by a grand jury. And then we'll see potentially Lemon later today, but he's being held and has been held overnight in Los Angeles unarrested on some charges that appear to be related to Minneapolis. Sarah?
And so, as we all know by now, Don Lemon was present with a mob of left-wing extremists who believed they could just storm into a church because the pastor worked for ICE. Lemon was there on camera, and he had made it clear to the audience that something major was about to happen. At one point, even, he pulled the camera away from the group, apparently, to avoid revealing too much information in real time. But what really stood out, if you remember about this, Lemon openly told viewers that the crowd might look a little MAGA coded because the people at the head of the group, as we found out, were local Black Lives Matters leaders.
Into Minneapolis a little bit ago and did some reconnaissance on the ground, speaking to an organization there that's gearing up for resistance and protest. I've been pleasantly surprised to see the community coming together. Diverse community. If you see this, when we first pulled up, we're like, wait a minute, which operation are we at? And as it turns out, because we're like, well, this is kind of MAGA coded, right? Saw the American flag or whatever, but these are resistance protesters. They're planning an operation that we're going to follow them on. I can't tell you exactly what they're doing, but it's called Operation Pull Up. And it's Takima Armstrong, and she has been doing this since George Floyd, Dante Wright, and others, where they surprise people, catch them off guard, and hold them to account. And so that's what we're doing here. And then after we do this operation, you'll see it live. And these operations are surprise operations. Again, I can't tell you where they're going.
Think about what you just heard right there, ladies and gentlemen. Don Lemon a media figure, acknowledging on camera that the optics were being managed, that the appearance was being shaped, that the perception mattered more than transparency. And so now, after all of that, the consequences look like they're catching up to Don Lemon. And so now Don Lemon is facing charges of conspiracy against rights and violation of the FACE Act. Now, let's get into the FACE Act because it's a major part of it, and it stands for the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, which was passed in 1994 because of a wave of blockades, threats, and violence that was targeting abortion clinics at the time, their staff, and patients. This was in the late 80s, early 90s. And so at the time, Congress argued that state and local laws, they weren't doing enough to stop these efforts that were intimidating, obstructing, and using force against people who were trying to access reproductive health services, or just against the facilities themselves. And so they created the FACE Act, which made it a federal crime to use force, threats, or physical obstruction to interfere with access to reproductive health services. And then they also threw in the exercise of religious freedom at places of worship. So you may be wondering, why did they add these two things together? It might not make that much sense. At the time, there was no major problem with people blocking churches, but many believed at the time that Republicans did this to appease conservatives so it would not be so one-sided. And so they included it for strategic reasons, as far as to make sure that the bill would actually get passed. If the act only protected abortion clinics, they believed at the time, it could be attacked as ideologically one-sided or as targeting a single political issue, right? And so what they did, they broadened it. By adding the exercise of religious freedom component to it at places of worship, Congress did three things at one time, basically. They strengthened the constitutional footing framing of the law protecting civil rights, not just abortion. So now it became a civil rights issue. They created symmetry in the law. The statute now applied to anyone using intimidation or physical obstruction to stop people from exercising a protected right, whether that right was medical or religious worship. And they expanded federal jurisdiction, including churches, synagogues, mosques, etc. This allowed the federal government to intervene when local authorities couldn't or wouldn't handle coordinated politically or motivated intimidation. And so what it prohibits is whoever by force or threat of force or by physical obstruction intentionally injures, intimidates, or interferes with or attempts to injure, intimidate, or interfere with any person because that person is or has been, or in order to intimidate such person of any other person or any class of persons from obtaining or providing reproductive health services. Also, by force or threat of force or by physical obstruction, intentionally injures, intimidates, or interferes with, or attempts to injure, intimidate, or interfere with any person lawfully exercising or seeking to exercise the First Amendment right of religious freedom at a place of religious worship. There it is. Penalties for whoever violates this section shall, in the case of the second or subsequent offense, after a prior conviction under this section, be fined in accordance with this title or imprisoned not more than 3 years. And so this is clearly his first offense. There's nothing prior he's done. But when Don Lemon is literally telling you that this group that he is fully aware of, they're going to go in to a church, and the BLM leader tells you that they're going in there to create a scene and cause chaos and disrupt business as usual. And Don Lemon is fully aware of this, that they are about to violate someone's civil rights. And then he also tells you that they're coding the group to make it look like a MAGA crowd in order to keep everything on the low. Yeah. Now we'll see what happens, because the BLM leaders who were also arrested and charged, they end up getting out on bail or whatever. And so they're already back out after being arrested. And do I believe that once this is all said and done, Don Lemon is going to be behind bars for 5 to 10 years? No, but we'll have to wait and see exactly what comes of all of this and what are the consequences for violating those people's rights. But here's CNN arguing that Don Lemon was only there in a journalistic capacity. Take a listen.
Lemon has said all along that he was there not as an activist, but as a journalist. In fact, he was saying those words and repeating that out loud when he was inside the church. But he clearly knew something was taking place that day with the protesters. He told his viewers on YouTube to stay tuned because there was something about to happen. He was careful not to have his camera crew walk into the church until there was a disruption. And I would urge people to go online, actually watch the YouTube video, see how it all went down. I think Lemon's reporting from inside the church was very valuable. As a viewer, I learned a lot about how it happened, how it all went down. He interviewed some of the protesters in real time, yes. He also interviewed some of the worshipers, and I thought their comments were really insightful about what they went through, about how troubled, how scared they were by the disruption. At the same time, like I said, you learned a lot from the protesters about why they decided to show up there, believing that one of the pastors at the church also worked for ICE. So this video on YouTube, this is the real focal point. This video, it of course happened on a Sunday morning. This video was then streaming for everyone to see. And by Monday, the day after that incident, there was a lot of online outrage on the right. Many calls from MAGA loyalists to have Lemon arrested. I think an important part of the story here is the amount of pressure the Justice Department, Pam Bondi, and others have been under from the right to arrest Lemon, to take action like this. And as you said, the initial attempt to do so failed in Minnesota. Now we're seeing another attempt to do so. And Lemon did say on his live stream last week, he expected the government would keep coming for him.
What we're watching right now is a lot of people confronting a truth they were never prepared for. Actions have consequences. There's an immaturity baked into the way that we see a lot of people on the left, how they view their rights, as if it means they're free from limits, rules, or accountability. But freedom isn't chaos. Freedom is order with boundaries. And your rights aren't weapons, they're guardrails. And the moment people decide that their cause justifies trampling over others, blocking access, intimidating, or disrupting lawful activities, they've crossed out of liberty and into lawlessness. That's exactly what we saw play out in that church. And what happened wasn't about expression. It was the predictable outcome of people who confuse entitlement with freedom and aggression with moral authority. Because a stable society depends on one basic understanding, ladies and gentlemen. You're free to act until your actions begin to violate someone else's rights. When that line is ignored, the consequences aren't political. They're inevitable. Now I want to hear from you. Drop your comments down below. As always, smash that thumbs up. That's how I know you like the video. Subscribe to stay locked in with the content and share the video. That way more people see what's going on. Until next time.